Summer of the Mariposas. The deer. It's not a deer, it's a doe, and there are 5 of them in my arbor. Chapter 4. Instead of helping Juanita carry the body, I went to sit in the driver's seat of Papa's car to be sure Juanita didn't try her driving stunt again. Looking at myself in the rearview mirror, I took the cubic zirconian stud out of my left ear and replaced it with La Llorota's elaborate ear pendant. Their zirconian studs weren't expensive, but they were a birthday gift from Mama, so I didn't want to lose them. I attached both studs to an old envelope I found in the car and tucked them safely into the glove box. Still looking at myself, I shook my head, trying to get used to the weight of Lila Rola's hair pendant. I watched it glint in the daylight and wondered if it really was magical. It looked ancient and mysteriously beautiful, and for a moment, I thought it glittered magically. Juanita rested her forearms on the driver's window and looked at my ear pendant. Where did you get that? I found it, I said, twisting at the back of it to make it stay in place. It would take time to get used to the great weight of it pulling down on my small earlobe. Nice, she said, touching it glinting. Can I try it on? No, I said, it's mine. It's not what? Juanita's eyes narrowed, as if she was trying to put together a word puzzle. It's not nothing, I said, stammering on my words like a stalling engine. Don't you have something better to do than stand around looking at me? It's not that interesting. Her face dropped sheepishly. Well, I think I'm going to need some help. He weighs a ton, dead weight, you know. Oh, no, I said, getting out of the car, slamming the door shut. This is your show, not mine. Fine, whatever. Juanita walked away in a huff. I leaned back against the car, crossing my arms and watching as she enlisted the help of Velia and Delia. Even though I had put on the earring, I refused to admit that I had seriously considered taking the body back home to his wife and kids. It was unfathomable. This is stupid, I keep telling myself. Ghosts aren't real, and they don't give you expensive presents. I should go home and have my head examined. Okay, Juanita said, after positioning the body in the back seat with the side of his face resting against a pillow, looking like he was trying to sleep. Juanita took a list out of her back pocket and started rattling off its contents. Blankets? She asked. Check. Velia verified. Flashlight? Juanita continued. Check. Velia patted her hip. For the first time, I saw that she had a sort of tool belt full of odds and ends wrapped around her waist. It was one of Mama's worn waitress aprons with loops and odd-shaped pockets sewn awkwardly over it. I pointed to the absurd contraction. What's in there? I asked. Is this? Delia asked, grinning with indignant pride, her perfect smile brilliant. Medical kit, makeup, perfume, scissors, batteries, candles. Perfume? Why would we need perfume? Velia rolled her eyes at me. Hello, he's going to start stinking. Oh, great, I retorted. So now he's not just going to look like a prostitute, he's going to smell like one too. Velia gave Delia an elbow shove in the ribcage. I told you we should have brought Papa's Old Spice. It was almost gone, Delia said, rubbing at her side. So why not bring both? Velia looked mad now. I did, Delia said, pulling out Papa's old bottle of cologne with nothing more than a few drops left in it. See? People, please, Juanita interjected. Can we just move this along? We don't have time to nitpick each other. That's right, Delia said, watching me intently with fierce hazel eyes. Today we're on a mission, and we shouldn't let anything stop us from doing what's right. Today we need to work together. Otherwise, this whole thing could blow up on us. You mean like we could get caught and end up in juvie? Peeta asked. Delia took off her apron and folded it carefully so nothing would spill out of the pockets. She put it in the trunk where I saw more supplies. When had they gotten those things out of the house? They wouldn't do that to us, would they? She said, looking at Delia with for reassurance. Of course not, Delia answered, sounding like an expert. It's not like we've broken any laws. Actually, Juanita began, improper disposal of a dead body and even failing to report it, it is a crime. That's why we're doing this right and taking it to his family, who can give him a proper burial. But no matter what happens, we are the five little sisters, Conchita Ramondes, the Garcia girls, together forever. No matter what, Juanita explained, and looked like every time one of us said those words, they all huddled together and hugged. That's when I started to turn. Being left out of the circle of the Canita Ramondes was like being an orphan or suddenly being homeless. I didn't like the way that felt, didn't want to be apart from them ever, even if Juanita was changing the subject to avoid focusing on what could go wrong. So I did what any true sister would have done at a time like that. I stepped forth and let them pull me in. I wasn't pretending either. At that very moment, I changed my mind, believing in us as a team, believing that together we could go through anything. And for an instant, I wondered if maybe La Lorota was right. And this journey was our destiny, our path to true happiness. So we all loaded our gear in the trunk and got in the car. Juanita rode in the front with me, Delia and Delia side by side in the back seat next to the sleeping drowned man, while Peeta wedged herself against the opposite car door, trying to stay away from him. At the edge of the woods, before we turned onto El Indigo Highway, I paused at the stop sign long enough to turn around and look at the twins. What do you think? I asked, shaking my head to make sure the Argyles, our nesting rings on La Lorota's ear pendant, rattled against each other. Do I look stupid wearing only one earring? What are you talking about? Juanita asked. You're wearing two of them. They're a matching set. But really, where did you get them? Them? To my surprise, I felt the weight of an ear pendant on my right ear even before I reached up and touched it, feeling the coldness of the yellow gold within my fingertips. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror again. There it was, the other ear pendant, framing my face and winking at me. Its magical power was indisputable in the sunshine. I found them, I said, trying to justify her curiosity without giving away too much. She believed me when I tried telling her about she didn't believe me when I tried telling her about La Loretta anyways. Well, do I look dumb wearing these giant hoops? No, Delia said, excitedly joining the conversation. You look powerful, like a woman who knows what she wants out of life. Delia reached over and flicked the gold ring with her forefinger, making them tinkle against each other. Yeah, especially with your hair all wild like that. You look like a gypsy, a rebel with an eye for fashion. I reached up and touched my hair. It was more than wild. It was downright ratted with knots because I hadn't even brushed it once since we got out of the water yesterday. When we found the dead man, I wondered if there was a comb I could use later in Delia's apron contraption. I think it makes you look older, Juanita observed, more sophisticated. Good, good. I like that. I put the car in gear and turned onto El Indigo Highway toward the border. I'll need all the sophistication I can muster to make us believe when we attempt to cross the bridge. Crossing customs on the American side was always fast and easy. There's a toll to pay, so Velia put the $3 in the dead man's right hand and rested it on the right shoulder pad of the driver's seat. She pressed her shoulder under the dead man's arm to make it look like she wanted to be close to her daddy, when in reality, she was keeping the arm from slipping and falling into her lap. When we pulled up to the toll booth, the duty officer didn't even look at us. Peripherally, he must have seen Velia take the money from the drowned man's hand and reach over me to pay, because he took it from her without once glancing at us, unaware of who or what was inside the car. That's how much he cares, I thought. At that moment, I had a choice. I could make him care by informing him that the man sitting rigidly behind me was actually a corpse, or I could just keep driving. As I watched the duty officer straighten up and look at the next car, a brazen breeze picked up around us. It passed through the car, dragging a small bevy of tiny brown Mariposas into the car. The butterflies flittered around us, beating their wings gently against the windshield, then sitting prettily on the dashboard. At least a dozen of them had flown into the back seat and settled on Peta. Four of them clung to her hair, opening and closing their wings in long, luxurious strokes, when the rest of them crawled delicately along her arms. I think they like us, Peta said, smiling and sitting as motionless as humanly possible, trying her best not to disturb the delicate butterflies, with one of the Mariposas climbing up her nose, staring at her eye to eye. Peta looked like Bambi, right before the hunter shot his mother. The image of Peta looking so innocent and young made me think of the dead man's children sitting at home wondering what happened to their papa. At that moment, I realized what would happen if we were caught with a dead man's body in our car. These people would call Child Protective Services, and they would lead to a full-on investigation of Mama. They would label her neglectful and make her look like an unfit mother. I felt like deliberately on our journey. I felt like I deliberated on our journey for hours, when in reality, we were there for only a few minutes. The people in the car behind me started honking, and the toll booth attendant looked into the vehicle for the first time since we drove up. He glanced suspiciously at the sleeping man behind me. Terrified he might catch us with a corpse in the car, I snapped into action. I reached up and gave my left ear pendant a vigorous spin and asked for help, long enough for the girls not to hear me. Aztec Queen, Tanisha, Holy Mother of all mankind, give me your magical assistance. Distract this man, make him forget what he has seen. Then a nice pair of earrings, the attendant said, mesmerized by the sight of the whirling argillus humming against my cheek. Where did you get them? I'd like to find some like that for my wife. They were a gift, I said, watching the man squint to avoid the glare of the golden light emanating from La Loretta's ear pendant. the glinting directly into his eyes, momentarily blinding him. They're beautiful, he said, still too entranced by them to do much else. Is that it? I asked as I watched the officer stare at my earlobe. Sure, go on, he said, waving off in a dazed state of mind. The spell worked. I knew La Llorona was real, but for her promise of magic to be real too, with more than I expected. I was so exhilarated by the realization I did the most unexpected thing in the world. I listened to my inner nuts, sped out of the caseta, leaving behind everything that was familiar and normal and full of life, crossing over the threshold into the darkness of the dead man's life. We drove a few miles across the international bridge with the window down and the wind whipping our hairs around our faces until we slowed down and drove into the Abuna, the Mexican custom station. I pulled into the center booth and waited for the officer to come to speak to us. The Mexican officials was scary. He was a big, fat man, older than the moon, with huge, bulging eyes that devoured our female frames. When he saw that our father was asleep in the back seat, he looked from one pretty girl to another and licked his lips like an iguana. I wanted to sink the gas pedal into the floorboard and peel out of there, but he had other ideas. He looked at my small chest for a long time, and then he smiled knowingly at me. Where are you young ladies going? He asked. We're going to Chihuahua, I lied in perfect Spanish, a task that was not difficult since Spanish was our first language. We're taking him home, Peter interjected. Our grandmother, Juanita explained, smiling nervously. We're going to go see our grandmother in Chihuahua. The girl's lies cut through me with sharpness of an obstinate knife. The mention of our grandmother made me physically jerk in my seat. It was so reminiscent of what La Loretta had said to me I should do. I turned around and whispered, TMI, with I with an I could kick you for looking at my face. Inside, I was frightening the urge to cry. The thought of going right up to my paternal grandmother's residence, sitting down at her table and tasting her cooking, would more than saddened me. I wondered how she would receive us after only seeing us twice in her lifetime. Would she even know who we were? It's our birthday, me and my twin, Delia continued, pointing to Velia. My grandmother's throwing us a party, Velia said, batting her long eyelashes. There's going to be a live band, Los Coyotes, Delia invented, showing her perfect teeth as she smiled. You can come if you want. Where are they coming up with all this? I asked myself as I watched them lie shamelessly to the dirty old man. The more unsolicited information we provided, the more he might suspect something. He can't come. He has to stay here and take care of business, I said, turning to give them a look, the one Mama gives us when we're being bad. The look worked because after that, they just looked at him and pouted in mock disappointment. Your big sister's right, the old officer said, laughing. I have too much work. You see, he can't come, I concluded, staring straight ahead. But thanks for inviting me, he said. You girls have fun. Maybe I'll see you on your way back. And with that, he winked. The act that turned the sandwich I'd had last night before into a revolting slime and churned the fester in my stomach. Bye-bye, both Velia and Delia waved at the officer as we drove off past the Abula and into Pediso Negras. My heart was racing and my head was hurting, but the girls were whooping and hugging each other in the back seat. Juanita just sat back and looked at me smugly. A tiny bit of sisterly pride glinted in her brown eyes, but I didn't acknowledge it. I stared at the road ahead instead. We did it, Velia yelled. We got through the freaking border. Don't celebrate yet, I told them as I veered around the plaza. We circled the El Santidata di Nesatra Senora di Galupa and promptly crossed ourselves at the sign of the old church. We may have been wild and rebellious, but our mother wasn't raising complete heathens. You might want to go in there and pray, I continued. We have a long, challenging road ahead of us. We'll be lucky to get back past this checkpoint outside the city limits. This guy was the least of our problems. Hey, if we can get past that fat Bobo, Juanita said, we can get past the checkpoint. Whatever, I mumbled under my breath. They had no idea how much of an effort this was going to be, but I figured they'd find out soon enough. No use bursting their supplitas quite yet.